Hello, everyone, and welcome to Minimalist Gourmet, where today I'll be teaching you how to make shakshuka. This dish consists of eggs that we poach in a fantastically spicy tomato sauce, and the depth of flavor on this is like nothing else. Let's get started. This dish originates from North Africa in the Middle East, and it's typically eaten at breakfast. That's great because it is relatively easy and quick to make. I'll be making just a small batch today for about 2 people, but this is very easy to scale up. So if you have a large crew, you can get out a lot of breakfast in a little bit of time. I'm going to begin with about a third of an onion that I've peeled, put the flat face down on the cutting board, and then cut it into strips about a 1/4 inch wide. Bundle these all together, give it a 90-degree turn, and cut it into 1/4 inch cubes. A quick tip, when I'm cooking, I like to put my prepped ingredients onto a plate. This clears up my cutting board and it helps me keep organized. Next up, we need some bell pepper. I'll be using red, but you can use green or yellow or orange, it's not a problem. You can remove the seeds and that white membrane if you'd like, but honestly, there just wasn't enough on my piece for me to bother. The flat part goes down against the cutting board, and once again, we're going to cut this into strips about a 1/4 inch wide. Grab everything and turn it 90 degrees before cutting into 1/4 inch pieces once again. I'll be transferring this over to my plate to keep my cutting board clean and organized. We need about 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, and I love eating this stuff, but I hate peeling it. This works pretty well. If you take the garlic clove and put it down against the cutting board, run your knife down the back of the curved edge here, and open it up like a book, it's actually pretty darn easy to peel. Comes right out of the skin, and you're left with whole pieces of garlic. Or you can just use your knife to go and squash it, and it'll fall out of the paper. Totally up to you. Trim off the little root end of the garlic here and throw that away. I'm going to split my garlic right down the middle and cut it up into something that's pretty chunky. Something about this dish just screams rustic to me. You can absolutely chop this a lot finer though if you're not as big a fan of garlic as I am. Chop up your garlic and set it aside on a plate. You can use parsley for this dish if you'd like, but I'll be using cilantro because I just love the flavor. This woody stem here and these offshoots here are a little bit thick for what I want to use. You can absolutely use these, especially if you cut them up. However, I want to put whole leaf cilantro on top as my garnish, so I'm simply going to pluck off whole leaves and then just break them up by hand. And that's the last bit of prep that we need to do. We're just going to put our cilantro or parsley onto our plate with the rest of our prepped ingredients, and as you can see, it's going to make cooking a lot easier. And let's move on to cooking. I've got a small pot here that I'm going to put about 2, maybe 3 tablespoons of olive oil in and let it heat over medium high for about 4, maybe 5 minutes until it's nice and hot. We'll be sauteing our ingredients, starting with the bell pepper and onion. You know that your pot is hot enough when you put in your onions and bell peppers and you see a nice little sizzle from the oil. These onions and bell peppers are going to take a little bit longer to cook than the other ingredients, so we're going to give them a head start. You want to cook them here for about 4 minutes or so, stirring regularly. This will help soften up the vegetables, release a ton of aromatic flavors, and introduce a few new flavors by browning them. This is as far as I took it. You can see there's a little bit of browning around the edges, the onions have lightened in color, and they've reduced down a little bit. Now we're ready to get this dish kicked into high gear with spices and seasonings. We'll start with some crushed chili flakes, followed by a good dose of ground black pepper, and some cumin. If you have some harissa, of course, that would go excellent. I'm going to give it a quick stir here so none of our spices burn as we toast them. We're going to toast the spices just like we did the onions, which is going to help develop and bring out a wonderful fragrant aroma. Our paprika goes in, followed by our tomato paste. You want to stir this pretty continuously and allow it to toast for about another minute or so. This will help develop those flavors as well as cook out any raw tomato flavor that the tomato paste might have. And don't forget to check out the description below because I always include a written recipe with all of the ingredients and their quantities. And while you're down there, maybe consider giving this a like, commenting, subscribing. I would really, really appreciate it. Next up, our garlic goes in. This always takes the least amount of time to cook, so we're going to allow it to saute for only about 30 seconds to 1 minute. Once you can really smell that garlic aroma in the air, you know it's ready. And once again, we're only in about maybe 6 minutes of cooking time total here so far, so this is a pretty quick dish to make. One 14-ounce can of tomatoes goes in. I'm using diced tomatoes. You could use crushed if you'd like, or whole. If you're using whole, you will need to break those down using your spoon or potato masher. You could, in turn, also use fresh tomatoes, but I really do think canned are a little bit better in this application, but use what you have on hand and what you like. A pinch of dried oregano goes in, and you definitely didn't want to add this earlier when we toasted the other spices. course, we need to add a little bit of salt and a bit of sugar. This is going to actually help accentuate the natural sweetness of the tomatoes as well as cutting down on their acidity a little bit. It's something that I usually like to add to most of my tomato dishes, and a little goes a long way. Give everything a thorough mix, and you might need to reduce your heat slightly to say medium, possibly medium low. You're going to allow this to simmer uncovered for about 10, maybe 12 minutes. What we're doing here is driving off a little bit of the moisture and allowing it to thicken. Stir it every minute or so for this 10 to 12-minute period, and while it's simmering, it should look a bit like this. You don't want to really be more violent than this. It doesn't need to be splattering everywhere. This will be perfectly fine. And in a little over 10 minutes, this is what mine looked like. It is thickened up quite a bit, and this is as thick as I like it. Again, if you want it to be a little thinner or a little thicker, you can absolutely adjust that to your personal tastes. What I'm looking for here is something that still falls off the spoon, but it's thick enough that I can make wells in it. I will use my spoon here to move the sauce out of the way and make 3 wells. This is where I'm going to poach my 3 eggs. If you're eating this between 2 people, I'd recommend you do 4 eggs so each person has 2 eggs. I was eating this all by myself, so I just went ahead with the 3. Next, we're going to crack an egg into each of the wells that we just made. If you don't feel comfortable cracking the eggs directly into the pot, that's not a problem. Go ahead and crack them into a coffee or tea mug and then gently pour them in. Now, cover these and allow them to poach for anywhere between 4 to 8 minutes. If you want a very, very runny yolk, you're going to go with the 4-minute mark. And if you want a very firm yolk, you can go up to the 8-minute mark. It's totally dependent on you. You just have to keep an eye on it and pull them when they look done to you. My eggs cooked for about 6 minutes, and I was shooting for a medium. This looks great to me. The yolks are still runny, but they're at the point where they're just ready to set. However, when I changed over my camera and my lights to get the next shot, these ended up sitting there for so long that they ended up overcooking and becoming quite firm, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. To garnish, we're going to sprinkle on our cilantro or parsley that we prepped up earlier, and it's very common and traditional to sprinkle on a little bit of feta cheese. That's also delicious. When it comes to serving, it's very traditional to see this served family style where the whole pot is taken to the table and people serve it from there. You can serve this alongside something like couscous or fried potatoes to have a nice complete meal. For me, I'll be enjoying this alongside some delicious toasted sourdough. Very simple, but yet delicious. This breakfast is so unique and absolutely delicious. The best part is you can make it in one pot in under 30 minutes from start to finish. And guys, it really is just that easy to make this fantastic shakshuka in your home kitchen tonight. I absolutely know you can nail this. Let me know how it goes in the comments below. I'd love to hear how yours turned out. And thank you guys so much for spending a little bit of your time today with me. I really do value that and appreciate it. And I hope to see each and every one of you here again next week on the next episode of Minimalist Gourmet.